There's condemnation of Israel's latest move to tighten its grip over the occupied West Bank. Its security cabinet has approved plans to expand illegal settlements there. Is it a step towards annexation? And where does it leave the historic Oslo Accords? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. Over the past 3 decades, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly voiced his opposition to the historic Oslo Accords, which were signed in 1993. The US-sponsored agreement resulted in the creation of the Palestinian Authority. Since then, the PA has exercised some control in the West Bank, while still under Israeli occupation. This week, Israel moved to repeal laws and understandings, strengthening its grip and restricting the Palestinian Authority's already limited control there. The move was met by worldwide condemnation, with the US saying it's opposed to any Israeli annexation of the occupied West Bank. But will that stop Netanyahu's government's plans? And could it be a recipe for renewed violence in the occupied Palestinian territories? We'll get to our panel of guests in just a moment. But first, this report from Michael Apple.
Israel's security cabinet has passed new measures that further expand its grip on the occupied West Bank. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who wields enormous power there, made the announcement. He says Israel will, quote, continue to bury the idea of a Palestinian state by making its illegal settlement movement an inseparable part of Israel's government policy. Israeli settlers will now be allowed to buy land in the occupied West Bank, repealing decades-old Jordanian legislation that barred that. And Israel is expanding its control, undermining what limited power the Palestinian Authority had. Here's a reminder of who used to control what. The Oslo Accords, signed in the mid-1990s, divided the occupied West Bank into 3 areas. Palestinians were granted limited governing authority in Area A and partial authority in Area B, while Area C, the largest, remained under full Israeli control.
This fascist Israeli government wants to control all areas of the West Bank, areas A, B and C, and doesn't want a Palestinian presence here or in Gaza.
International condemnation of the announcement was swift.
This move is another step in the wrong direction.
Israel's violation of multiple UN resolutions goes back decades. But more recently, the International Court of Justice ruled on the question of Israel's occupation of the West Bank. In July 2024, it found Israel's continued presence there is illegal, and that Israel is obliged to stop all new settlement activity and repeal all legislation that maintains the unlawful situation. But Israeli settler attacks, the declaration of new settlements, and the expansion of outposts is at record levels. Palestinians say to them, the intention is clear.
The Israeli army gave us a week to evacuate the area. We looked for places to go, but couldn't find any, so we stayed put. At the end of the week, they came with a bulldozer to demolish everything.
In September, the US president said this.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
If there's going to be any pushback from Washington to this development, Trump will have the opportunity to raise it with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House during their meeting on Wednesday. Another hurdle for Netanyahu is what pressure Trump's regional allies, all opposed to the new measures, could bring to bear on what experts are labeling as the de facto annexation of the occupied West Bank. Michael Apple, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Well, let's discuss all of this now with our panel of guests today. And in London, we're joined by Yossi Mekelberg. He's Senior Consulting Fellow at Chatham House. In The Hague, in the Netherlands, Ambassador Ammar Hijazi. He is head of the Palestinian Mission to the Netherlands and also the permanent representative of the State of Palestine to the international organisations that are based there. And also in London today, Chris Doyle. He is the director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding and a specialist on the Middle East. Let's start with what has been done here, and we think it will come into force reasonably soon, what has been ruled by the Security Cabinet. Ammar, Ambassador, can you tell us, I mean, this to me seems very clear. It is a violation not just of international law, but of those historic Oslo Accords.
They are certainly, and they are much beyond that. They are a threat to international peace and security. They violate the core norms of what the international system is based upon. But they also aim to cement a colonial enterprise that has been pushed forward for almost 59 years since the beginning of this occupation. So they are much more dangerous than that, and they undermine everything that humanity stands for. And if they are allowed to pass, they threaten to normalize it elsewhere in the world.
So, Yossi, I mean, I had a quick look. There was the 2024 advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice based where Ammar is in The Hague, the UN Security Council Resolution 2334, Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, and the Hague Conventions on the Laws of War. Those are among the things that are binding international law. It seems that the Netanyahu cabinet don't really think international law is worth the paper it's written on anymore.
I don't think this government care one way or another about international law. We have seen it from day one of this government. This is just another example, an illustration that international law, as far as this government is concerned, is for others, but not for this Israeli government. And to be honest, beyond international law, I think Minister Bezalel Smotrich was very clear about what's the aim of these changes in law. He said, we want to kill the idea of a Palestinian state. So if there was any life in the idea of, and the possibility of a two-state solution, here he is, he admitted, we'll purchase more lands, we'll be in control of the entire West Bank, and a Palestinian state won't exist. And as you say, all this list of international law, convention, UN resolutions just don't matter for this Israeli government.
Chris, I mean, Israel, and you always hear this mantra about it being the democracy in a sea of countries that don't have democracy. Yet, I mean, they're tearing up laws without passing a law. This is a security cabinet making a decision. This isn't even going to the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. Are there any chances within the Israeli system that this can be overturned?
I think this is very unlikely because there is actually a consistent viewpoint across the Israeli political spectrum in terms of the Zionist parties, at least, that all of this can happen. It narrows the gap between what I think is happening, de facto annexation and de jure annexation. The reality in the West Bank today is, for the most part, Israeli law is the dominant law that affects everyone who lives there, and there are military orders that are used against the Palestinians. What we are seeing, therefore, is the hardening of the regime of apartheid, the systematic discrimination between Israelis and Palestinians that human rights agencies, Israeli, Palestinian and international, have been calling out now for many years. It means that two peoples have differing rights according to their identity. And what we are seeing is not so much the undermining of the Oslo Accords, because Israel has pretty much shredded those years ago, but it is actually the continuing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the land. This makes it easier for the Israeli military authorities, in combination with the settlers, to kick Palestinians off their land, to acquire more and more land by publishing all the private land ownership records, so that those Palestinian landowners can be targeted, they can be bullied into selling up, and then the settlers will take over. There is also, as, for example, organizations like Peace Now in Israel have said, really the option as well for doing what has happened so often, drawing up false land ownership documents to try to cloud the waters and provide a further excuse for taking more and more land. This is part of a process. It's one that in an Israeli election year, I think will be on steroids.
Ammar, of course, the position of the Palestinian state is that you want a capital in Jerusalem. Currently, though, your seat of power and administration is Ramallah. Just in terms of what these changes could do, are we talking a situation where if Israeli settlers get enough money, they could claim that they can buy up property in Ramallah, they then, into Ramallah, could call on the protection of the Israeli military? I mean, is that a scenario you think that we could now see?
I don't think it is a scenario. Israel has been trying, and Israeli colonial policies and the colonization of Jerusalem have been trying for so long to buy property in Jerusalem, and they managed in few instances, very limited, to coerce some people to do that. But under international law and under the duress that people are facing and the conditions that Israel creates, which deprive these people of living a proper life, sometimes these things happen, but they are minimal. The problem is that Israel has been forging documents, as we saw in the 60% of the occupied West Bank. Most of the territory is a state territory which belongs to the State of Palestine and the Palestinian people. Israel has already taken the majority of that area, and it moves on now to private property. The problem that Israel is facing in this takeover is that they had, supposedly, which they never respected, a level of legislation that does not allow for taking over private property. These decisions allow for that to happen in different ways. It will happen by coercion. It will happen through the terrorism of settlers that we see every day, and the pogroms that take place in the West Bank, from the Northwest Bank to the south of West Bank, everywhere against communities. It's happening against the majority of the secluded communities that were forced also to be displaced from their land, almost 2,500 or more. We're talking about that have to vacate most of what is known as Area C, which is 60% of the occupied West Bank. It's meant to create additional coercive measures against the Palestinians and to apply additional pressure against the Palestinian people. But under international law, this means nothing. Israel, as an occupying power, has no authority to sell or buy, and anyone who buys a land under international law, they are buying into occupied territory, and thus are buying into an illegality.
Yossi, this happens behind closed doors, the Israeli Security Cabinet. What we know about this doesn't come from Prime Minister Netanyahu. It comes from the Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, very far right, a settler himself, but he also has this role in the Ministry of Defence. Palestinians are supposed to have some self-rule in the West Bank, but has he now effectively been given the role as de facto ruler of the West Bank?
Yeah, and I think it's Bezalel Smotrich has a role within the Defense Ministry, and the announcement came not only from him, but also from the Defense Minister, Israel Katz. So this was a cabinet, security cabinet, as you say, it's done behind closed doors. But at the end of the day, Israel is de facto ruler of the entire West Bank, Area A, B, and C for many years. At the end of the day, the military doesn't respect one zone or another more than the other. If they need to enter or the field that they need to enter, they do enter. We see it, as the previous speaker, when settlers decided to enter into areas, whether it's A, B, or C, and terrorize Palestinians, they do that. I think if you look at the details of this decision, it's really worrying. And you need to, I think we need to understand, this is not only a government that doesn't respect international law, this is a government that doesn't respect the Israeli law. It doesn't respect the Supreme Court or the president of the Supreme Court. It's a government that attacked all the democratic foundations of the country. So for them, what happens in the West Bank is an extension, all of it, on the way for annexation. If you ask about Ramallah, but look what happens already in Hebron. There is a Jewish community within Hebron, and now this decision is about, for instance, to create a municipality for the settlers inside the city of Hebron, so already annexing part of Hebron from the city itself. So you look item by item, and you see that the idea is because of the imbalance of power between Palestinians and the Israelis and the settlers, to coerce them into, even if they pay for it, but to coerce them to sell their land, and eventually they won't have to live inside Ramallah because they will put it under siege as at the other cities and be in complete control.
Chris, you heard Yossi there use the word annexation. But interestingly, although Netanyahu has repeatedly threatened to annex the West Bank, that word was not used in the comments that came from the Security Cabinet. Why do you think they're not using the word annexation? Do you think it's deliberate?
I think it is deliberate because President Trump, upon whom Netanyahu is dependent for so much support, has made it clear that he would rule out annexation of the West Bank, that he doesn't want to see it happening. But Netanyahu doesn't have to annex the West Bank because already, effectively, it's already happened. So they can continue to build the settlements, take land, take resources, without actually having to go down the path of formally annexing. They can do that in 5 years or 10 years' time. It won't change strategically the direction of what is happening. But I think there's two other processes that are going on here. One is also, it's not just killing off the very notion of a Palestinian state. It is also reducing the power, the credibility, even the legitimacy of the Palestinian Authority. If Israeli forces continue and even enhance their preparedness to go inside the Palestinian cities and what we call Area A, then what is the role of the Palestinian Authority? Now, Smotrich himself, the finance minister, has been reducing the Palestinian Authority to a state of near bankruptcy. It can't really pay salaries. It is largely impotent. And it's quite curious that we see a situation where nominally the position of the Israeli government is to get rid of Hamas in Gaza, but it's almost closer to bringing down, to collapsing the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. The other process I think we're seeing is that Netanyahu is squeezing the Palestinians in the West Bank. Don't forget, there's been a major military operation in the northern part of the West Bank against refugee camps that has led to 40,000 people being displaced in refugee camps such as Jenin and Tul Karm. Now, if you hit the Palestinians like this, you continue to take their land, if you move them off it, then he is anticipating some form of response. And then that will provide the cover for further military operations. So this is all about escalation in the West Bank. As I said, in an election year, it means that the right is now battling within Israel to demonstrate how hardline they're going to be and that they are going to take what many of their supporters see as part of the historical, biblical part of the land of Israel.
Ammar, you are the ambassador representing Palestine in what's known as the City of Peace and Justice. You represent Palestine, among other bodies, to the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. And many would say that Palestine's efforts at bringing international justice and recognition for Palestinians are something that Palestine has done very well. But then you heard Chris Doyle there talk about criticism of what's going on back home and your leadership in Ramallah. The Palestinian Authority, weak, marginalised, many say corrupt, led by President Mahmoud Abbas, 90 years old, now in the 21st year of what was supposed to be a 5-year term. I mean, the Palestinian Authority is a complete mess and nearly dead, isn't it?
No, it's not. I disagree with you. And the Palestinian Authority is a branch of the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, that is the PLO. We are certainly under very harsh times because of Israeli occupation and because of the measures. And what is being asked of the Palestinian people to achieve under these duress and under these circumstances is unrealistic. We have got all the checks from everyone in terms of what we have achieved so many times. How many times have we built up in Gaza and in Palestine and elsewhere? And how many times do we have to rebuild after the Israeli invasions and destructions? And how much can we rule over our people and have proper democracy when we have this occupation severing ties between the Palestinian families, let alone Palestinian cities and everything? So the reality of the matter is that we're being asked more than we can achieve, and it's being used as a political ruse just to undermine our right to self-determination. This destructive policies of the Israeli colonial occupation is meant to erase the Palestinian people. And the semantics about they did this and they did that, actually it started with the start of occupation. It's the continuation of the Nakba that we witnessed in 1948. Nothing changed. Israel is applying the same policies, the same practices that are leading to forcibly displace the Palestinian people and replace them with another people. That is the reality of the matter, and that's the core of the problem. The Palestinian people will sort their problems and will have a proper governance, as we have been also praised at so many occasions. But once we are rid of this occupation and once we are allowed to live and govern as we are supposed to be, free people and without the pressure of occupation and the conditionality of the international community, that our freedom hinges upon how much we walk and respect our occupier and our oppressor. That's not acceptable, and it cannot be the case.
Okay, Yossi, I mean, they are destroying the Security Cabinet, some of the mechanisms created by Oslo. Of course, the Palestinian Authority is itself a product of the Oslo Accords. Do you think the Netanyahu government want to destroy the Palestinian Authority or just make it very, very weak?
I think it's almost the same, and we saw it vis-a-vis Gaza. You know, understandably, Israel doesn't want Hamas in Gaza, but they won't let the PA to take over. So who does Israel want, unless it wants also to annex, in this case, not only the West Bank, but Gaza as well, and build settlements there? At the end of the day, if Israel and this Israeli government would have really meant to end the conflict based on the two-state solution, where they would look to a partner, actually a capable and a strong partner, not weaken the other side. But because it's not interested, it would like to keep the PA but as weak as possible until they got to a point that they think they can get away with full annexation in a way that was Chris said earlier. They don't need to declare annexation. It can go on for a very long time, creating the appearance that there is some self-rule by the PA, but at the end of the day being in complete control. And this is the danger, until they completely remove from the international agenda the idea of a two-state solution. But, you know, with all the criticism of Israel, which is well-deserved, we need also to look at the international community. You know, it's been, you know, so many condemnation, there are so many resolutions, and every time there's something like this, another condemnation. But for Israel, it's just a price worth paying. It's just a noise that they will accept as long as they can keep building settlements, separate between East Jerusalem and the West Bank, acquiring more on grab, more land, and bringing more people into the West Bank until they can annex it formally.
Well, just words when it comes to condemnation. I think it's worth looking at the backdrop to all of this, because since 2023, of course, because of the death toll and destruction and bombardment, Gaza has been in the news, perhaps overshadowing what's been going on the ground in the West Bank. And if you just look at the statistics, they are quite horrifying. Israeli forces and settlers have killed at least 1,113 Palestinians in the past nearly 2.5 years. That includes Israeli troops killing at least 230 children in that same period, while the number of Palestinians wounded in the occupied West Bank stands at more than 11,100. And Ammar, during all of this, the speed and pace of settlements has just grown as well.
That's true. And I think Israel thinks that they have a big opportunity now to end the Palestinian existence on their land, whether it is political or human presence. And they are trying to finalize their aims, their declared aims that everybody knows that they did not make secret. And this has been the case with so many other Israeli governments in different ways, unfortunately, even those who pretended to support peace. The reality of the matter, and I agree with what have been said with the previous speaker also, that without serious actions by the international community, the cracks that the Israeli government and the policies and practices that Israel is violating in terms of international law and international principles that were created are now finding their way to the international community.
Okay, let me stop you there and ask you what you were hoping. Let me stop you there, Ammar, and ask you what you were hoping the international community might do, because there are important meetings coming up in the coming days in Washington, D.C. You have Prime Minister Netanyahu meeting President Trump, and then you have the Board of Peace meeting, which is supposed mainly to concentrate on Gaza. But that will include some of the big Arab countries getting together with President Trump. Are you hoping that there'll be pressure put on Israel?
Well, the word pressure means nothing. I think the actions are very clear, and what is required legally from international community is delineated as per the ICJ advisory opinions. There are 3 of them. There is also the UN resolutions. They are very clear in this sense. And they all call on exacting measures not to recognize as legal the actions, but also not to aid or abet. And that means settlement products should not enter. Army and any kind of military relations should be severed. And furthermore, exacting some sort of sanctions on Israeli officials and those who continue to encourage all kinds of violence and terrorism against the Palestinian people. There are so many economic, political, and legal steps that countries have. Many are discussing. This country I'm in are now also debating the issue of settlement products and other issues. Others needs to move forward and start shoring their legal responsibilities. Otherwise, I mean, the airways are filled with criticism and condemnation of what Israel has been doing, and it led to nothing but encouraging Israel to continue pressing on. For us,
thank you, Ambassador. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much to our guests today, Yossi Mekelberg, Ammar Hijazi, and Chris Doyle. Stay tuned to Al Jazeera, the place for comprehensive coverage on this story. You'll also find plenty of context and analysis at aljazeera.com. We'd like to hear your views too. Go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. Or on the former Twitter, X, tag us with your comments. We are at AJ Inside Story. I'll be back here again soon. Until then, from me, James Bays, and the team in Doha, stay safe and well. Bye-bye for now.